Hello, everyone, and welcome to a bit of midweek fun. We are the Stately team, and this is a Stately stream. I'm here with David and with Kevin. I'm not going to ask to introduce yourselves today. We want to show you a little bit about the create actor context, and we're going to do that using a very, very simple little React to do app. So, David, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, sure. So just start off with, I built a small scaffolding skeleton. Hopefully you could all see that, but this is a simple to-do app which does not work. I can't even type in here. That's how much it doesn't work. And that's because we're going to be adding the logic in there ourselves. So before we get started with create actor context, I want to talk a little bit about the current state of things, like how you would currently do things, or at least before this latest release in XState React. So in this new to-do, we're going to, instead of using use states or use reducer, I just want to really quickly demonstrate using a state machine instead. So just for this very simple new to-do example, there's two things that could happen. And I'm going to be doing it in code. Later, we're going to be going into the editor and seeing how it's done there. So we could say that a new to-do could be changed. Of course, when a user types in there, it's going to be changed. And it could also be created. So this is like when you actually submit that to-do. So we're going to do a simple assignment over here for change, just actions assign. And we're going to assign to the message. So we get two arguments, context and the event. And we're going to be passing in the message for this to-do through that event. And so you could see over here, we have send type change, and the message is the events.target.value, which means that now if we start typing, hit reload because code sandbox is silly sometimes, and you could see that the message is actually changing. Now, when we create it, remember, this is a local machine. So it's not really affecting any sort of global scope, which we will get to in a minute. This is only a machine for this local component. So we can't do much of anything right now. So I'm going to say actions. But what we can do is, actually, we could do two things. First, we could assign the message just to an empty string so we could clear it out. And so here's how that looks when you click that. Again, I have to reload. It clears it out. But you could see that there's one problem here. And this is actually one reason why I really love state machines, is because let's say that you're typing over here, you click here, but you're like, you know what? I just want to keep creating to-dos. When I click here, this loses focus. So when I type, it's not really going to do much of anything. Well, to solve that, because XState declaratively handles effects, we could just, I already have an input ref, but I could just directly focus that input ref. So current, it might or might not exist, and we go ahead and focus it. So now, see, it clears it out, and it focuses again. And I think this is on the form, so I could just keep typing like this. Now, unfortunately, this isn't going anywhere. So another one of the design decisions with XState is that you could just have strings as, I guess, placeholders when you're prototyping some logic. So I'm just going to write here, like, send to to-dos, or you know what, add to-do, whatever we want to call it. So this is our little placeholder. Think of it like a comment for where we need to add this later. So this was demonstrating the current use machine hook within a single to-do component. But as it turns out, React developers typically need to share states between different components, and that's exactly what we need to do here. So we're right now we're going to jump to actually creating sort of a more global, or at least global to this to-do application, a global machine that describes how we want our to-do app to behave. So I'm just going to call this to-dos, and we are going to do a few things, you know, just keeping with the theme of to-dos. Let me just zoom in here. Still getting used to this new mouse. Okay. So I really recommend not, like, when you're first starting with state machines, don't think about the different states it could be in first, because that's something that is actually more appropriate as a refactor target, or when you when you have written a lot of state machines and you can anticipate like, oh, these are the different states that our system is going to be in. So I'm going to start here just by doing events. So we're going to have todo.create, and this is going to represent creating a to-do. Sorry for the funky arrows. We'll fix that. We have todo.delete, and this represents deleting a to-do. We also have todo.update, and this is when we update an existing to-do. And also we need a way to say if a to-do is completed or not. Now, typically when you're making a to-do app, you might have an is complete Boolean or completed or something like that. We're going to get a little bit smarter and use, the state machine, the very essence of state machines. So we're going to have todo.set status, which could be a finite number of statuses. In this case, it could be completed. You could imagine if you're building out your to-do app, you might have more statuses like deferred or snooze or deleted or just things like that. But these are the 4 things that are going to happen. Now, with todo.create, we have some some actions that we want to do. We are going to actually, we're going to add a guard, because what we want is we want to only let this happen if the message is not empty. So message not empty. Because what point is creating a to-do with with an empty message?
A lot of empty to-dos then.
Yeah. So let's also add an action over here, and this action we're just going to be creating a to-do. So for deleting a to-do, same thing. We need to actually do an action. So I'm just going to have that as delete to-do. Update, we are going to just have that as an action as well. Update to-do. And setting the status, we are going to set status. So again, it's a pretty simple state machine, but it's enough to get us started, and we could understand everything that's happening. Yeah, so
PDCL says pretty much every event needs a guard. Would you agree with that?
Some of them, yeah. If you want to get really, really robust, then yeah. For example, you shouldn't be able to update a to-do that doesn't exist, or set status on a to-do that doesn't exist either. So yeah, but for the sake of time, you could implement those guards yourself. We're just going to have one guard over here. So, but yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, most of these will need a guard. All right, so I copy that over, and now I'm going to add it onto here. So we have our to-dos. Again, nothing is necessarily working yet. We have to actually add all of our things, and so let's go ahead and do that. So first thing to add is we have our we have some guards. Actually, we have only one guard, message not empty. And so this message not empty, actually, just for sake of time, I'm going to do this inline to show you. So for message not empty, what we want to happen is we have the context and the event. The to-do is going to come from the event. So we're going to say event.todo.message.length is greater than 0. So this is absolutely necessary for creating this to-do. And so let's grab a sign from here. Okay, so now we are going to update our to-dos. Oh yeah, so that's another thing. Data. So this is going to be a very simple data structure. We're only going to have an array of to-dos. And so the to-dos are going to look like this. It's going to say something like update XState React in order to get this new functionality that we're going to be talking about. The status is going to be either complete or incomplete. And we're also going to have an ID, and you're going to see why in a minute. So I'm just going to set this to math.random. You could use UUID or something a little bit more robust than that. And so creating a to-do, at least immutably, is a matter of concatenating, I believe. So you do context.todos.concat. And so you're going to add that to do. And so that to do should have an ID. So I guess we could just pass in event.to do. Actually, just to keep things simple, creating the ID should be a concern of our logic, not of the actual UI. So I'm going to set ID math.random. Okay, so let's start with that. So just before we add all the functionality, let's actually see things working. So any questions before?
Yeah, one question from Dio Kim said, is the dot in the event names just a convention?
Really good question. So this dot, it is sort of a convention, but also XState comes from the SCXML standard. It follows it pretty closely, and it uses a dot for a special purpose, actually. This could just be a normal event name, but also in version 5, you're going to be able to do wildcard events. So you could say, maybe in some other state, you could say to do dot star, and so that will mean any event that starts with to do dot. You can't do something like to do star or Todd star. It has to be delimited by a dot. So it's actually very useful. It's a feature more than a convention. So it's more powerful than just a nice way of naming it.
That is helpful. Kevin, we got to note that down because Kevin and I were talking earlier about we were talking earlier about how you the text different styles that you use inside of state machines, and that's an important one because it is a feature rather than just a personal preference.
Right, exactly. So, but yeah, as far as putting spaces and state names, like that's purely personal reference. So yeah. Okay, so now here is the magic sauce, or whatever you want to call it. Let's grab this to-dos machine. So import to-dos machine. And I'm doing this at the app level. Because of the way that React context works, you could really put this at any level. You could even have multiple React contexts. But right now we're assuming that our entire app is a to-do app, and we want to share the to-dos states with the whole app. So import to-dos machine from, we're going to grab that from to-dos machine. And we need to, so if you think about like how you would do this normally, at least before the latest changes, you would think, okay, we need to create a React context, and then we need to create a provider, and then we need to add all the types. And on top of that, we also need to, to add all of the hooks, either make custom hooks or do sort of the boilerplate thing of passing the actor into the hook, etc. But now there's a much, much easier way. So that easier way comes from XState React. If you import createActorContext from XState React, and this is version 3.1.0. We recently released a patch at 3.1.1, so definitely try that out. Here's how that works. So you're going to create a to-dos context. And remember, this is a React context, not just to disambiguate from the XState context, but you this is going to come from createActorContext, and you pass in your machine, and that's it. That's all you have to do to create a to-dos context. And so now you could wrap it in a wrapper, to-dos context provider, and notice that you don't need to add any sort of initial value. So and that's because that is coming directly from the machine. So what this is doing behind the scenes is it's passing that actor instance around. It's not passing state around because that would cause an unnecessary amount of re-renders. So this keeps re-renders to an absolute minimum. At most, it's going to render once, maybe twice if you're in strict mode, but just assume it's like for all intents and purposes, it doesn't render more than necessary. So now the actor created from this to-dos machine is going to be available to everything that's under this provider. So let's actually test this out by, I guess, going into to-dos. And we are going to, right now I have an empty array. So I actually want to fetch to-dos. So we have one to-do over here. And hopefully, if this works, you're going to see that to-do in there. All right, so how do we actually get that? Let's export this first. Forgot to do that. And then we are going to use the to-dos context, use selector. And remember, you don't need to pass in the actor over here because it's already part of the to-dos context. So we could just directly grab it from state.context.todos. And now we have an error. Let's reload. Cannot read properties of undefined. Okay, let's see what we did wrong. To-dos machine, we have context, to-dos. That should be correct. Okay, so let's debug this. Any questions while I do this?
No questions as of yet.
We'll cut this in post. Okay, so just taking a look here. It says the
it's good to see that sometimes you are human as well.
Yeah. Blame the demigods. Okay, so for whatever reason, the context is not being populated. So we could just take a look at our machine and see what's happening over here. We do have this context. Aha! There we go. That's a reason. Okay, so to fix this in the studio, what I should have done was I actually should have modeled the context in the studio as well. I just went the lazy way and put it in here in the code, but this does work. So
it's good to know that a lot of people in the comments noticed.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. You all are fast. Okay. So now we have a to do. So that's useSelector. useSelector is a very useful hook because what this is going to do is select only the state that you want. And so this to-dos component is only going to re-render when this value changes. So with useSelector, if you want to do it like a shallow equals thing, because right now it's just directly comparing the reference, you could pass in, I think, shallow equal from XState React. I think that's what we called it. Yeah, so shallow equal, if you really wanted to do that, that's a, an optimization that you can do, and we do provide that for you. But this is only reading state. So what if we actually want to update the state somehow? And like we talked about, we did add that functionality so far for todo.create. So let's go into new to-do and see how we could actually hook our global machine up with this local machine. And I promise you, it's a lot easier than you may think. So again, we are going to grab the to-dos context, and we're going to grab the actual actor instance. So to-dos context dot, and it's use actor ref. And then since creating a to-do is an action, so this add to-do thing over here, I'll just add it as an action over here. In fact, I'll do it the React way. So we could pass it in as actions over here. And so add to do, we are going to get, well, we have the to do message in the context. So we could just do everything over here. And since we have that to do's actor, we could send stuff to it. So to do's actor dot send. And now we could send it type to do.create. And the to do is going to be, the message is going to come from context.message. Scroll here so you could see that. And we're initially going to start with the status of incomplete. Now what's going to happen when we create, it's going to add that to do, and then it's going to clear out the to do. And this is why predictable action arguments true. At least for version 4, this is an important flag to have just to make sure that these run in order, because we want the original to do, then we want to clear it out, and then we want to focus the input. So let's test it out. Going to reload and pray to the demo gods. Okay. So let's see. Fix TypeScript errors. Press enter. There we go. Yeah. So now we learned 2 hooks: use actor ref and use selector. If you wanted to, and this is good for prototyping, you could also just use actor. And so this is going to give you state and send, just like the normal use actor hook in XState. So just keep in mind there's a difference between use actor and use actor ref. And let us know in the comments if that is any sort of confusion. But yeah, so I'll pause for questions / add some implementation if anyone has any questions.
Here we go. Hugo asks, when using the shared context for lookup only, and we use it to derive the machine's own context, does that create re-renders or even trigger to rederive that machine's context with the selector?
Okay, so when using the shared context for lookup only, to rederive that context with the selector, it's honestly going to work like use memo. It really depends on your selector. If you are, like, for example, calculating a new object every time, it's going to re-render every time, but that's what shallow equal is good for. Otherwise, you could just assume that it will only re-render when the actual value changes. Hopefully that answers your question if I understood it correctly.
And John says, I really like the absence of magic here. It all makes sense.
Yeah. So the main point is that it is a thin wrapper over something that you could already do. So using React context, you could basically do the same thing yourself. It's just that by us providing it, we're able to provide stronger typings, handle edge cases, just make it a lot easier for you. Yeah. So right now I'm just adding to-do delete functionality. We're going to be passing an ID to the event. So we're going to say, we just want to filter the to-dos where the ID is not the event.id. It's sort of an easy way, and any to-do app tutorial will basically tell you to do the same thing. So wiring this up. Oh yeah, so let's actually add this to the to-do, because this is another reason why you would want to have that shared state, is because you have components really deep inside like this to-do, and you might have buttons or things that you want to do inside of here that need to reach that global machine somehow. So in order to do that, again, we could get the to-dos actor, and that's to-dos context that we need to import, and use actor ref. And so the main use case for this is to have that send function. And so we're going to do a few things. Let's start with deletion. So I have this little X over here, not accessible. That's my fault. We should really have something for that.
Yeah, should really have some sort of alternative text, some sort of title.
Right. Type, so delete, and we're going to pass it the ID. And so the ID is going to come from the to-do. Now, keep in mind that the to-do is passed in directly from the props, which, again, eliminating magic, this is just a good thing to do. If you want to read this to-do and instead pass the to-do ID instead, and then select it from the to-do's context, then you can absolutely do that. That's completely up to you. I just like passing in that entire object, just to keep everything together. Okay, so what's going to happen is when I click this, it's going to send this to-do.delete event, which is going to delete the to-do. So hopefully, if I add a to-do, to-do's actor.send is not a function. Let's take a look at that. Let's see. To-do's actor.send should totally be a function because we did import it here. Let's see. This was totally working like 2 seconds ago. Okay, let's take a really quick look. In fact, what happens if I inline this? I doubt that this is going to fix it, but let's see if anyone in the comments.
Nothing yet.
Gotta love live coding.
Oh, there you go. Use actor ref, not use actor.
Wow. Okay, I confused myself. That's embarrassing. Okay, thank you so much. But yeah, so no, that was on purpose. It was a demonstration of how not to get confused by those two things. So, like, eliminate confusion. Okay, there we go. So now if I press X, it's going to delete the correct thing. And by the way, this is just a general React/programming tip. The reason that we assign random IDs to each one of these is because deleting by index is a very fragile thing, because when things in the array shift, because you're deleting things, their index changes. But if you give it an ID, that ID is never going to change. So thank you so much, whoever said use actor rep instead of use actor. You saved me a lot of time. Okay, so deleting works. And I just, you know what? I think we have time. I'll show maybe one or two more.
Should we just jump back quickly just to
Yeah.
some of the questions that we had from earlier? So Alejandro asks, is this another way to communicate between parents and children instead of spawning actors? I can also see a difficulty with extracting that machine outside of the component because of the input ref. And Hugo has the same concerns.
Right. So this is sort of two questions in disguise. Like over here, we have this input ref.currents.focus. We could easily change this to focus input. And then it becomes something that you could extract and use pretty much anywhere. But the other concern is that we actually have two different types of actors. We have an actor over here, which is represented by this machine controlling the individual to do. And then we have an actor, which is more of a global actor. So if you need to communicate between a component-specific machine like we have over here and more of a global machine, which might not be related to any components directly, then this is one way to do it. But of course, another way, which is more of an advanced example that I didn't want to show today, is that you could spawn these to-dos, and you could spawn them from the parent machine and then just use those directly. We're not doing it here just to keep these simple, and I really wanted to demonstrate the difference between use machine and using a more global states, but I will definitely make an example just showing the difference between those two. And I imagine that most people, when starting out with XState React, are going to do things this way, and now hopefully do things with createActorContext instead. So I think there's a couple more questions.
Yes. Oh, John asks, can you share a read-only link to the sandbox? I will try to grab that in a second. Hugo asks, is there a way to get the history of the changes to the shared context in a centralized location?
History of changes. Yeah. So again, we are creating our context over, not over here, but in the index. And we have this to-dos context.provider, and here's our to-dos app. So if you wanted to, subscribing to changes, keyword being subscribing, that would be a React effect. So what you would do is you could do something like to-dos actor equals to-dos context dot use actor ref. And then in my favorite hook, but this is actually a good use case for it, in use effect, you could subscribe to the changes from that actor. So I'm just going to make this an empty array. And so we could say to-dos actor subscribe. And then you have the state. You could do whatever you want with the state, which, remember, includes all of the events, all of the changes that happen. And in order to be a good citizen, just make sure to return that unsubscribe function. So that's one way you could do it, if that answers your question. But this would allow you to save that history. So save all of the states, and then you could do things like time travel debugging or logging or whatever you want with that.
I've added a link to the code sandbox in the comments if anyone wants to have a look at that.
Awesome. Hugo says more like a history so we can rebuild the shared context if needed. Oh, okay. So I think you're talking about persisting states. So persisting and restoring states. Yeah. Okay. So that is another part of the API where if you have that restored, again, you would use something like use effect to store that state somewhere. Let's say it's local storage. And then there is one optional prop over here in the provider, which is machine. And so the machine, it should be, and TypeScript will enforce this, but it should be the exact same type as this, and it could be a function as well. So I could say here, to-dos machine dot with context, and then I could pass it in that restored context. So you could definitely do that, and then it's going to restore the machine at that state. So, you know what, let me just try this out real quick. If it doesn't work, then I have something to fix. But message persisted, ID something random, status incomplete, or let's call this complete. There you go. So that's how you. I'm actually surprised that works. But that's how you restore persistent state.
David, I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about, actually, in that example that you just had with the machine prop there? Can you talk a little bit about when you need to wrap that in the function, versus just, let's say, what would happen if you passed in to-dos machine dot with context as the value of machine?
Okay, really good question. So because React, whenever something changes, it really likes to just re-render everything, and we do have safeguards against that. But typically, you would, if you're creating something every time, where this with context function is creating a brand new machine every time, you really don't want to do that. So if something else is re-rendering the app, it's going to recreate this to-dos machine. And thankfully, with the hooks inside of to-dos context, which is using just the normal XState React hooks, it's going to warn you like, hey, you're passing me a brand new machine, but I only expect the same machine, the same single instance of a machine every single time. By passing it a function, you're saying, evaluate this and remember it. So the alternative to that is literally just passing in use memo inside of here. I mean, this gets really sort of nasty, so I would not do it this way. Instead, we give you that shorthand where you could just use a function. So again, if it's just a normal machine, so let's say that you recreated over here. So const persisted machine equals this machine with context, then you could just pass it directly. And it's going to work.
Great. Alejandro says, if possible in the future, it'd be great to have an example of a to-do app that fetches to-dos from the server with React query, or use loaded data from Remix, for example, that hydrates the state of each to-do.
I completely agree. And that's the reason why I actually don't like to do MVC, just because it's way, way too simple. It doesn't really model how real world applications work. You always have, or almost always have, that network layer that you have to deal with. And so honestly, low key, I bought the domain todomvp.com. And so I'm going to use that and actually demonstrate some of these things with an actual to-do app, which persists your to-dos, stores it, lets you fetch them, simulates errors, etc. But yeah,
that's great. Well, everyone keep letting us know if you do have requests for examples like that. That's something that all of us are working on right now. And hey, I'll just like I do in the office hours, I will mention we've got a roadmap kind of board thing on statelyai.canny.io. And there we actually have a specific board just for requesting examples, because we know that we've got a lot of examples we want to make for you all. And if you let us know what interests you, upvote the ones that are already there so we know how to prioritize them. We will do our best to get to them.
Thank you. So there's one more thing I want to show, just because you all are here. And by the way, thank you everyone live on the stream for watching. I wanted to just demonstrate more of an advanced XState feature, which advanced makes it sound scary, but it actually makes things a lot easier. So you might know that there's this thing called the peer action. And so I'm just going to get it from actions.peer. So I imported actions above. And so what actions.peer does is it allows you to return a function that just returns an array of actions. And so because of this, you don't have to return the same array of actions every time. It just needs to be deterministic. So it needs to be based on the context and the events that gets in. And, as long as no side effects are actually being executed inside actions.peer, hence the name, then you're good to go. So to demonstrate this, I have this actions.peer over here. And first, let's start simple. I'm going to just demonstrate the API. We're just going to be returning one action. And so that's when we update it to do. So we're going to assign to-dos, and we already have the context in the event. So we are going to, so that's going to be context. Actually, well, let's have it be a function. So context event, just because it's easy to split this off later. So I'm just going to do something funny. We're going to spread the to-dos over here because I'm going to be lazy about updating the to-do. So const index equals to-dos dot find. Basically, we're going to find the to-do that we are updating. To-do.id is event.id. You could also map over all of the to-dos to do this if you want. The performance is probably the same. This is just the way that I do it. Index equals to-dos index event.todo. In the future, I'll probably do a video where we're using immer instead, because immer makes this so much easier, and it's super easy to use with React. So return to-dos. Okay, so this is just a very simple, we're using actions.peer to return an array of actions, which in this case is just a single action. And in our to-do, we actually need to do something when it's updated. So that would be not this one, but this one over here. So on blur. And so on blur, we want to, and I'll show you why it's on blur in a minute, but we want to update the to-do. So that's going to be to-dos actor.send. We're going to pass it a to-do update event. The ID is going to be, we already have the ID, it's from the to-do. And the to-do is going to be the message, and the message is going to be that events.target.value, value. And also we're going to get just everything from the to-do. So we're just updating that to-do object wholesale. So let's see if that works. Gonna reload. Okay, so let's uncheck this. Maybe it's permanently, oh yeah, because we haven't implemented that yet. So I want to change this to do. And I promise you it is changed. I just realized that there's no obvious way of knowing that it changed. So I'm just going to put to-do.message just as plain text over here. Okay, so now you could see when I tab away, it says changed. Here's the functionality that I want to add and why I use the peer action. Having an empty to-do does not make sense, just like we talked about at the beginning. So it's like, what does this mean? I'm guessing that from a user perspective, if I delete my to-do, then chances are I actually want it deleted. Now, there are two ways you could do this. You could do this using a guarded transition, but I'm going to use actions up here just to demonstrate another way of doing it. And there are going to be use cases where having just a custom action makes more sense than having guarded transitions. So we want to just check the to-do. So if to-do.message.trim. So basically, if our to-do is empty, and we're going to, and this is another advanced XState feature, or advanced, it's not that advanced, but we're going to raise a delete event. So to-do.delete, and the ID is going to be the event.id. Now, this is sort of a superpower that XState has that I haven't seen, any other state management library have, but it's the ability for the state machine to send itself an event. So basically, this is telling itself, if the to-do message is empty, send myself a delete message, and so, or delete events, and that delete event is going to just straight up delete that to-do. So let's try it. So delete me. We go here, going to clear it out. Press tab, and it's gone. And so it even works with trimmed values. So if I go here, just going to delete that. And there you go.
Very nice.
I'll pause there for questions.
Very cool.
Hidasayal asks, is this only on V3 or is it available on V2 in terms of this functionality in React, in the React package?
This is as of XState React version 3.1.0.
Which is already released.
Yes, this is already released. We do have documentation, but we are going to be having a blog post soon, and this demo is going to be included as part of that blog post.
Great. Hugo asks, and John says we might need to summon an Anderist for this. How would a machine's type gen get impacted by shared context that is defined outside of the boundaries of the type gen?
How would the machine's type gen get impacted? I would say it wouldn't. So basically, this isn't doing anything special that, it's not like reading things from outside or anything, unless you're talking about like sending events to a machine or something like that. Well, what I'm trying to say is that type gen is going to work exactly the same because at the end of the day, you're still creating a machine, interpreting it, passing it through context. So I think the words shared context might be a point of confusion. It's not that there's shared context as in the machine context. It's more that we're passing the machine actor through React context, if that makes sense. I might have
let us know if you want to clarify on that one.
Yeah.
And is it okay to assign context and send an event in one action?
So assign and send an event as in raising an event? Yeah, that's absolutely fine. If I understand that correctly.
David, I have a couple questions about the pure, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that in this demo, you're choosing to do the inline actions instead of the text string. But I assume that the array that you return from pure can also be an array of action names. Is that correct? Or do they need to be an array of inline actions?
Oh, no, they could be an array of action names as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Right. And would you say this pure is particularly useful? Because I know you said that you could decide to do guarded transitions, or you could do pure. But sometimes I find we have like, let's say, multiple guarded transitions, but they're all leading to the same target state, but they simply just need to have a different combination of actions. This would be a case where you can do away with that and only do it at the action level, the pure, to kind of bifurcate.
Exactly. And so it's helpful for that. So basically, yeah, that's actually a good rule of thumb. Use pure if you just wanted to go to the same state, but just do a different set of actions. And the other reason that that's useful is because instead of using sort of an external XState guard, you could use normal if conditions inside of your pure function, and then you get more strict TypeScript typings that way. So, yeah. All right, I'm just going to do one more thing here, and that's to change the status. Basically, we want this to work. So I'm going to say todo's actor.send, type todo.set status. ID, we're going to give it the todo.id, and the status, it depends if it's checked. So event.target.checked, checked, and it's going to be complete or incomplete. So with that, let's finish this demo. There we go.
Nice.
Very nice. Just going back to when you were answering Kevin's question earlier, Holy Crimps asks, when do you do this over guards?
So again, just to reiterate, it is when you are going to the same state, but you just want to consolidate the different actions that could happen in one single action. In terms of the editor, we actually have something that we will be releasing in a few weeks, which makes it a lot easier to define these sorts of actions. But yeah, so rule of thumb, use guards when you're going to different states. So you're trying to redirect which state do you go to. Use pure when it's basically the same state, the same action group, but you just want different actions depending on your context or event.
Great. Do we have any more questions? We will be doing more of these streams in the future, so make sure that you subscribe to us. If you want to watch more in the future, you can do that whether you're watching us on Twitter or on LinkedIn or on Twitch or on YouTube. Although I think YouTube and LinkedIn are better at letting you know when the streams are happening live. And we do have plenty of other Stately streams on our YouTube channel if you want to catch up on any of the previous streams.
Exactly. All right.
And look at that. It's looking fabulous in the studio as well.
Yep. I'll stop playing around now.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will catch you again soon.
Thank you all.
Goodbye.